Hey everyone, my name is Amanda Breeze and I'm a cannabis educator specializing in aromatics, things like terpenes and flavorants. This is a workshop that I absolutely love to teach. It is a hands-on workshop, or really like a nose-on workshop, and as you can imagine, we can't really do that through the screen, but I'm going to try to make some suggestions as we go through so you can smell along with the workshop. Now, normally, like I said, I do this in person, and unfortunately last weekend I was bit by a wasp right before I taught this workshop, and it went just about as good as you can imagine after being stung by a wasp and being deathly allergic to them. EpiPen crew. So it didn't go smoothly as planned, and that is why I've decided to redo and bring to you guys Introduction to Cannabis Aromatics. Shout out to Camp Canna for bringing me into the fold as one of their featured educators. Now, as you can see, I have my lab coat on. That means we're seriously learning today. And I also have my Cannabis Aroma Wheel, which I co-created with Ryan Herron under the brand that we co-founded, Centelligence. So this is our last year's version of the wheel. A new one's coming out, but this is an amazing tool, and we're going to keep using it throughout this workshop. It is available through centelligenceproject.com. I co-created it with my business partner and co-host of The Smoking Spot, Ryan Herron, coming to us from Portland, Oregon. So if you haven't checked out our podcast, it's called The Smoking Spot, and we talk about weed and we talk about smells. So if this is your thing, welcome to the team. Have been working in the cannabis industry for over a decade, almost 15 years. I love it. I love working with plants, and I love specializing in cannabis specifically. My background is in herbalism and aromatherapy, so I've put thousands of hours into studying terpenes and their effects on the body and plants. I specialize in smells, so I am a smell expert. You guys may have seen some of my previous workshops at other events or possibly even online, and maybe you've read some of my articles. I hope so. If not, welcome. Today what we're going to be learning is how to create sensory descriptions and how to identify smells in cannabis. So if you are interested in becoming a cannabis sommelier, want to write better reviews about the weed that you're smoking, if you want to just expand your language and expand your dictionary of descriptive words to describe smells, if you just really love weed, this is the workshop for you. Cannabis is a bouquet. It is not one single smell. It is a multitude of smells in just one nug. And then you think about all the different strains that exist. Thousands of smells can be found in just this one plant. I was recently in Oregon and I found a strain that smelled like root beer. I found a strain that smelled like literal soap. And I also found a strain that smelled like peanut butter. There's so many smells in this one plant. So we have to always think of cannabis as a bouquet of smells. And when you're looking to identify one single note in a bouquet, it's often quite challenging. I like to imagine like a Thanksgiving dinner, because you know that smell of Thanksgiving, and it's a medley of gravy and butter and meat and stuffing, and it's all these different smells in one that we could just call Thanksgiving dinner smell. But if we broke it down, we would be able to pinpoint those individual aromatics. And so just like in cannabis, it's this bouquet, it's this Thanksgiving dinner. We'll call it the Thanksgiving dinner strain, and it's got all the smells in it. And how do we find the mashed potatoes? And how do we find the turkey? And how do we find those top notes and those base notes when we're smelling just this one thing? And that's the challenge of smells when it comes to evaluating cannabis. Sensory descriptions are so important to this industry. Smell has always been part of cannabis culture. Whether you're buying from a dispensary or your guy on the corner, the first thing anyone does is pop open that bag and give it a whiff. Smell is arguably one of the biggest parts of cannabis culture. It's what everyone does. It's what everyone relates on. It's what everyone wants to talk about. So being able to pinpoint smells is pretty essential, especially as the cannabis industry progresses and more of these unique strains become available. We need to really start to expand our vocabulary and our descriptors to be able to encompass and identify really unique features in weed. I normally would bring some smells and pass them around at this point in the workshop, but I want you guys to just use your imagination a little bit. So some of the common descriptors that we often see in cannabis, whether it's in a dispensary or hanging out in the park, is you might smell it and think of the 5 main categories: citrus, fruity, let's go to the board, sweet, gassy, and earthy. These are the 4 most common descriptors when it comes to evaluating cannabis. But these descriptors are very, very basic. They basic. Citrus, there's so many different smells in the citrus family, and there's a really, really big difference between lime and orange. Yes, they're both citrus, but they are very, very different smells. And so this is a good way to start thinking in terms of what is the specific aromatic we're experiencing. And so I don't have them to pass through the screen to you today, but I want you to imagine some of these smells, okay? Let's see. In the citrus family, and these are also smells that are very common in cannabis, we have lemongrass, tangerine, lime, lemon, mandarin, petitgrain, which is orange leaf. We have orange. Of course, there's a sweet orange and a bitter orange. There's lime and key lime, which is much sweeter. There's also eucalyptus lemon, pink grapefruit, and white grapefruit. Even within the grapefruit family, there's so many different smells. Pink grapefruit, so sweet, so delicious. White grapefruit, bitter but tangy. Now, what do all of these smells that I just listed have in common? 1, yes, they're all in the citrus family, but 2, if we looked at their terpene profiles, they would be basically identical. Bum, 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 okay? So the thing is, right now in cannabis, we use terpene profiles to help identify aromatics. But if we're just using 1, a terpene profile, and 2, the umbrella term of citrus, we have not described succinctly the difference between an orange and a lime flavor. Bum, 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 okay? So this is something important to consider, and that's actually why the Cannabis Aroma Wheel does not list terpenes, because they're very limited in the information that they can provide to us. Now, is it valuable to have terpenes listed on cannabis packaging? 100%. Is it going to give you all the information? No. And that's why we need people like you, the smell nerd that is watching this video, to 1, like, follow, and subscribe, and 2, figure out these amazing descriptive words so we can have more information available on cannabis packaging, like descriptive words. So I always recommend, if you are trying to train your nose, let's say even just within the citrus family, to identify more smells, essential oils are an amazing tool that can help you train to identify unique features when creating descriptive words. Aromatherapy is an amazing tool when you become interested in how smells work and their effects on the mind and body, which is something we talk about a lot in the cannabis industry. So I highly recommend going to your local apothecary. I shop at Anera's Natural Health Apothecary in Toronto. They have an amazing selection of essential oils and a massive selection of citruses, for example. All of the ones I listed, which is where I bought them. And they also have an amazing, thorough website. Really super thorough. Now, interestingly, the reason I recommend essential oils is not just because they smell good and they're extracted directly from plants, but essential oils are 95% terpenes. They're 95% terpenes. So they are a great teacher and a great tool when studying smells, because they are affordable compared to botanical terps, and they come straight from the plant. So you're gonna have some diversity depending on the different blends. So for example, you might have a Bulgarian lavender, a lavender blend, and an Argentinian lavender. You might have a Tanaka lime, a key lime, and a Mexican lime, right? There's so many different plants that we can use. And so if you purchased 3 limes and 3 oranges, you could start to get your nose to identify subtleties in the smells. But you can also start memorizing the smells themselves, so you can start to say, oh, this strain smells like citrus, ... sweet orange, lemongrass. Specificity is everything when it comes to writing descriptions and when it comes to evaluating cannabis. Now, terpene isolates are also another helpful tool when training your nose to smell and identify different aromatics. And there are lots of courses available online that you can take that will help you identify some of the features of different terpenes. There's lots of stuff you can do online, but at the end of the day, you're gonna need to get your hands on some of these smells to really, really pinpoint them with your nose. And so isolated terpenes come in liquid form, and they're available from lots of different places. I buy mine from Abstracts Tech. I think they're one of the best companies on the market when it comes to botanical terpenes and isolates. What is a terpene? My God, that is literally step one of the whole program. Terpenes are scent molecules. They're isolated scents. It's one single note. So if an essential oil is extracted of a plant and it's a bouquet of smells, and if a cannabis flower is a bouquet of smells, and we have this Thanksgiving strain, a terpene is one single scent we pull out. It's not that confusing. Imagine a bubble. Terpenes are just bubbles that exist all around us, filled with smell. And crazy enough, they also, much like these bubbles, obey the laws of gravity. Also, when it's cold, they'll fall lower to the ground. I have an article about winter smells. We're not gonna get into that today because it's still summer, but stoked on the bubble machine. But when we're talking about terpenes, we're talking about isolated scent molecules. They're one single note. They are not a bouquet. It's one single note. And so a limonene isolated terpene, what it looks like is you would find it in a little bottle, and it's a liquid, kind of looks like an essential oil. And this thin, super viscous liquid, you'll smell it, and it's one single note. Other terpenes, myrcene, that is our musty smell, mushroomy. We also have pinene. Pinene is pretty self-explanatory. It's the delicious smell of pine. But again, the single note. So the bouquet is walking into the woods, and the terpene is pinene. That is the one smell we can pull out. And so if you looked at a bottle of pine essential oil, which is 95% terpenes, pinene would be the top terpene, the primary terpene in that terpene profile. But you might also find small amounts of myrcene or limonene. And every different tree is gonna smell different, and every different tree is gonna have a very similar but unique terpene profile. It's similar because when we create a terpene profile, terpenes are found in such minute amounts that we really can't even begin to find all of them. There's over 200 terpenes that have been identified in cannabis, and yet even the primary main note might only be at 2% or 3%. Really, really small amounts. So we're talking about minuscule 0.0001% of smell. And so we only usually generally list the top 5, but the nuance is in those littler numbers as we work our way down the profile. It's just so minute, we wouldn't even put it in. And also it wouldn't really make sense. I think 5 to 10 is pretty normal, but you'll see they're almost always repeated because it's all coming from the same plant, and cannabis has 5 dominant terpenes. I have this chart that normally I pass around. Maybe I'll jam a little picture of it in here right now. But this is the top terpenes that you can find in cannabis. So I've listed limonene, beta-caryophyllene, pinene, humulene, myrcene, and linalool. These are single scent notes that when combined in different proportions pretty much create the smells of any strain of weed that you've ever smelled. These are the ingredients to the recipe. And so these are important to also be aware of and be able to smell. So that's why I recommend, if you're building a scent library, which you do need to practice smelling and to get better at identifying smells, you're gonna wanna include some terpene isolates in that library as well. And then once you start practicing smelling, let's say you got 5 of the list that I just sent you. If you got 5 of these and learn to identify their smells, you can then practice by smelling the essential oils blindfolded and see if you can identify the primary terpenes in them. or you could smell the weed. You want to look for things that have profiles so you can cross-reference your own work. The point of this is that it's very easy to train your nose to identify smells. You just need a base collection of smells to work off of. And one other tool, the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. The first time I got asked to do a cannabis profile evaluation was one of my first years working in Humboldt County. And it was like a dream come true. Like, oh my God, I get to like get paid to smoke weed and then write about it. And they were like, just tell us what it tastes like. Help us identify the differences between these strains. It was a Blue Fire, Blue Cookie, and Blue Dream. Blue Dream was really, really big at that time. So literally everyone was growing it and crossbreeding it with cookies, of course. No complaints, fuego, 10 out of 10. However, I sat down thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a million things to say. I'm so excited to write about all of this. I'm so excited to do this. And I had a clean bong and I had a joint of each, and I was gonna take a bong, try to taste it sommelier styles, and then try the joint and while puffing on it right. And so I remember hitting my first doobie and in my first bong and sitting there with my pen, and no words came out. And I thought, oh, maybe I just need a second strain to compare it to. I smoked the second one. No words came out. I'm starting to panic. I smoked the third one. Could not think of any words. Outside of the basic descriptors, fruity. It was Blue Dream. Of course it tasted fruity. The task is to differentiate. And I thought, I can't believe I can't think of any words to describe this. It wasn't until years later that I discovered why. And it's from one of my favorite books, written by Avery Gilbert. It's called The Nose Knows. In this book, he describes it as a tip of the nose phenomenon. It is a challenge for humans to identify scents out of context. And so if I am looking at a nug and it just looks like a green leafy thing, and I smell it, and I think, ooh, I know that smell. Oh, I know what that is. Maybe it's blueberry, maybe it's grape, maybe it's orange, it's something you know, but you just can't pinpoint the word for that smell because we're looking at an orange smell, but it's a green leafy thing. It's out of context. We're trying to identify it completely out of context. And even though we all know what an orange smells like, it's a verbal barrier. It's that the average person becomes completely tongue-tied when trying to identify a smell. It happens to everyone. This is a cognitive problem, okay? And it's that we know the words, but we just can't get them to come out. So this tip of the nose phenomenon happens when we know the odor, but we cannot identify it. Now, this is what inspired me and Ryan Herron to create the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. We are much more able to identify scents when we're working off a list. So we put 121 smells identified in common categories that are also broken down into families. So for example, let's go fruity because we're talking Blue Dream here, but we have fruity, which is broken down into the families of berry, orchard, and tropical. And then we have about 15 different smell notes from passion fruit to mango to peach. Okay, we have all these fruity smells. And so by working off the list, you're able to actually identify the smells that you're experiencing. Let me find my light. Found my light. But this is why we invented the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. And so you're able to work from the center and work your way out to identify all of the smells that you're looking for and to help you pinpoint, but you can also use it subtractively. So you can say, well, I definitely know this isn't what a peach smells like, and I definitely know this isn't what an apple smells like. Maybe it's pear. And so you're able to identify with specificity when working off of a list. It helps contextualize the smells. And so me and Ryan spent several years building this, consulting all kinds of experts and other people in lab coats to come up with this list. Now, it is not by any means an exhaustive list. And the thing about smell is that different things smell different to different people. There's a little bit of subjectivity to it, but generally speaking, we can all agree on most things. Now, up until this point, I've really only used examples of foods and fruits because botanicals are much easier to get your hands on for this type of workshop where we're like exploring smells and having to use our imagination. But the wheel also has some like way out of left field descriptors. Descriptors don't have to be scientific. You don't always have to say, this strain smells really high in limonene. Boo, boring. Now, there's in the gassy category, we've broken down the families into funk, chem, and bakery. So this is where it starts to get a little weird. We have musty basement. We have unleaded gasoline. We have Windex. We have Play-Doh, okay? Peanut shell. Some categories get a little weirder than others, but the idea is that we're looking for descriptors. Yes, it smells like a musty basement. I'd rather know the strain is a stinky, stinky cheese strain than that it's very rich in phthals. That's not going to mean a lot to most people. Now, I understand if you've made it this far in the video, you're a nerd. Me too. This is nerdy shit. So this is stuff that you are obviously very interested in. And so for people like us, we do want to know the scientific terms. We do want to know about volatile sulfur compounds, which is where the skunk smell comes from. And we do want to know about thiols. And we do want to be able to identify the difference between lactones and esters, right? Honeys and berries. So there is an interest and there is a niche arena for people who are interested in becoming cannasoms, where this type of information is valuable. It's not included in this poster, and that's okay. This is a sommelier level tool, but it's not all inclusive of all of the compounds or even really terpenes, which is often what people are most interested in. I digress. So we were inspired to create the Cannabis Aroma Wheel to help people write about cannabis smells. We love smells, and we also use this tool, both of us. I write for an assortment of magazines and blogs and online publications, and so does Ryan. So we're always looking for new ways to describe the strains that we're experiencing that really set them apart from other descriptions and really showcase the best of the best. Both of us live in weed cities. I'm here in Toronto and he's over there in Potlandia in Portland. And so these are places where these little descriptors are really what the people want. This is the most comprehensive sommelier tool. Everybody needs one. Let's talk about aroma wheels. Why a wheel? So aroma wheels are very, very common in other industries. Wine, whiskey, coffee, herbs, a lot of luxury agricultural products have wheels to accompany them because being able to differentiate is what separates a $2 chuck from a fine Merlot out of Napa Valley, okay? By being able to start to differentiate and identify nuance, that's how we elevate products like cannabis, agricultural products, to the luxury market. One of the most probably notable and well-used wheels actually comes to us from the wine industry, and I think it's really nice to look to the wine industry for inspiration instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, as it were. Wine, much like cannabis, is really only 1 or 2 degrees away from the field. So you harvest the grapes, there's 1 or 2 rounds of processing, and you get the final product. Similar to perfume, there's very few middle steps that elevate the product from the earth to what you sell to the consumer. And this is kind of an interesting point in comparison. Now, when we think of wine, certain regions are more well known for their wines because they embody certain flavors of that region. That is known as terroir. And terroir is essentially means the flavor. So it's from the sun, from the earth, from the water, from the location. It's the elements of the growing conditions specific to a region develop a certain flavor that only that region can produce. Think champagne and sparkling wine. Champagne is only from the Champagne region of France. Think of here in Ontario, we have VQA wines. They're noted for their higher quality and their flavor profiles from certain regions in Ontario. And we also see this in California, and California is a great example to look to because that's also where a lot of weed is grown. And so if we can have conversations about terroir in wine in Humboldt County, Sonoma County, their neighboring counties, then we can talk about what is that terroir look like, taste like, smell like in the cannabis also grown in that region. This is part of a larger question. Once you're able to establish that a terroir to that region is special, you can receive what's known as an appellation, and that is the VQA, or it's an acknowledgement that this is special. And once you receive that, that is what elevates it to a luxury product. And so on the market today, you might see some products that cost more than others. This could be because they're hand trimmed, or maybe the jars are a little fancier, or maybe it's from a craft producer. There's a lot of reasons why prices are more or less. But what we haven't seen on the market yet is a truly top shelf luxury product identified in a way that is understood across the industry. So we're still in the development phase of understanding flavors, and that's why it's really important for us to start pushing forward deeper understanding of aromatic profiles and flavor profiles within the plant. And so that is our inspiration here of creating the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. So the appeal of creating a wheel is that it organizes specific products, smells, and flavors into categories that are very easily recognized and understood. It's just a really simple way of breaking down, in this example, 120 plus scent notes in simple 5 categories broken into families. It's a very simple process to follow. It's a very accessible way to start to identify smells, and anyone can do it. Anyone can become good at smelling, and one of the common misconceptions is that smoking makes you bad at smelling. It's just not true. In conclusion, the Cannabis Aroma Wheel is the first step to understanding nuanced aromatics and training yourself to recognize them. Once we're able to identify specific scent notes, smells are stories. It's all about creating the story to go along with it. And the art of the cannabis sommelier is the art of storytelling. Perfumery is another great example we can look to, because it is a luxury agricultural product. It starts from the earth, it has a few degrees of processing, and it becomes its final product. And it retains its essence, right? We're retaining the qualities of these plants. Perfumery is about retaining the smell of these amazing bouquets. Wine is about retaining the flavor of these amazing fruits. And cannabis is all about preserving aromatics. I think we've all been there when you accidentally leave your jar open and then your weed smells like hay. We want to preserve the aromatics. So perfumery is such a good industry to look to for inspiration when it comes to writing aromatic descriptions. It's about connoisseurship and communication. That is what sets perfumes apart. Perfume tells the story of its aroma, and we can do the same with cannabis. So back to my man Avery Gilbert. Again, this is part of his book, The Nose Knows. Again, my favorite book. Go read literally everything by Avery Gilbert. He also works in the cannabis space, and he has written some amazing white papers about cannabis aromatics that are far more entertaining than they should be. Dr. Avery Gilbert, #1 fan. He talks about in his book how to describe smells, and it's one of the best descriptions that I've ever read. Similar to perfumery or wine, because we're talking about agricultural products. Again, luxury agricultural products, fixing my hair. They're also commodities. So we were looking for things that set them apart. That's what makes them special. First, we're looking for their general category. And again, looking to the aroma wheel, this is our fruity, citrus, earthy. We're looking for the general categories that they fit into. So we have a starting point of what we're expecting moving forward. Then we try to find smells that fit into those categories and creating personal impressions. What I like to do is a drive-by. When I'm working with smells, I never take a big snog. I always do a gentle waft, because you can burn out your olfactory receptors very, very quickly by over smelling something, and that's going to affect your end description if you have burnout and you don't notice right away. So I like to do a drive-by and write down my first impressions, the first things that come to mind. And then I do it a second time, and then I do it a third time, and I take those 3 impressions and I bring them together to create my overall impression. The thing about smells is that certain scent compounds will come forward more than others. So top notes in aromatherapy, it's always the first thing we smell. Top notes are the citruses and the fruits. Your middle notes are more herbaceous. It's going to be the leafier smells. And then your base notes are the resinous, barky, earthy, super heavy, generally sesquiterpene aromatics. Okay, so we're thinking resins. If you imagine a tree, this is actually from my mentor, Tracy. Imagine a tree. Top notes is the canopy. It's the fruit and the flowers. Middle notes is the leaves. Base notes is the trunk and roots. And so when we're smelling, top notes always evaporate first. All smells are volatile. What we're experiencing is that smell exploding off of where it's coming from and into our nose. And so we're going to get those top notes first. So citrus is generally going to be, if it's present, you're going to smell it first. And so if we over smell the citrus a little bit and burn that out just enough to get to your middle notes and base notes, you can actually form a much more robust profile of the cannabis that you're smelling. Discover 3 distinct smells in those impressions. Try to find 3 distinct smells and then bring them all together. How do you do that? It's one, we can get together a smell library. As I described, you can get essential oils, you can get isolated terpenes, but you can also just exist in the world and experience smells actively. So at the grocery store, explore the herb section. Basil, other aromatic herbs, thyme, oregano. There's so many smells you can experience just in your everyday life, and try to start actively noticing them. I'm having some minor technical difficulties, but that's fine. Use the available ingredients you have and work with the wheel. That is really the best way to start pinpointing aromatics specific to cannabis. Using umbrella terms just is not good enough. I hate pineapple, and often that flavor in cannabis will be simply described as fruity. I love fruity strains. I love blueberry, I love apple, I love pear. I love fruity strains, but I hate pineapple. So if I go into a shop and I ask for a fruity strain and I come home with pineapple, I am a dissatisfied customer. I will not be happy about that. I do not like pineapple flavor. Descriptors are so important in this industry when we have so many aromatics and so many strains to explore. So umbrella terms just are not good enough. Now, when we're trying to create these sensory descriptions, now we've done the drive-by, we've created our first impressions. The next step is to try to put it together into a full description of the product that you're trying. So to create an advanced sensory description inspired by perfumery, what I describe is it should be a combination of ingredients and imagery to tell a story. It starts with ordinary adjectives: woodsy, fresh, citrusy, fruity, floral, okay? We add some technical terms: sesquiterpenes, terpenes, limonene, myrcene. We bring in those things because this is important to our description as well. And then we add an emotion. Now, the emotion in cannabis mustn't be the effects. If you're trying to write professionally, they do not want that. Generally, what they want is just a description of the product itself, not the effects. So it's the emotion, it's the feeling of it, like a hot summer's day, the feeling of a summer's day, the feeling of lounging by the pool, the cold steel of a blade. We're looking for imagery. We want drama and we want seduction. Drama and seduction. That is what makes for a great description. That's what people want. Smells are stories. So we're bringing in the adjectives, we're bringing in the descriptors, we're bringing in a little bit of science, and then we're telling a story. And that's how you write a good review. Companies in the cannabis industry need experts like us to create colorful and accurate descriptions of their products as the industry moves forward. We will not become a luxury agricultural commodity until we can establish these amazing descriptors. So look to wine, look to perfume. Get yourself, start building your smell library. Invest in some terpenes, invest in some essential oils. You can start to train your nose to smell and then practice writing. That's the thing. You have to keep practicing. Thank you for making it this long through the video. I have lots of different articles and things online, podcasts, of course, The Smoking Spot. If you're interested in learning more, tune into the podcast. Me and Ryan Herron, we co-created the Aroma Wheel. We co-founded Scenttelligence. We do formulation, we do education, and we love weed and we love science. So check out our website, scenttelligenceproject.com. We're launching a new version of the Aroma Wheel in the next couple weeks. It's more of a poster for your dispensary, and it includes a little bit more information than the current version does, but you can still get the current version digital. Print versions will be available soon. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Insta is at emerald.temple.living, the smoking spot at the.smokingspot, and Scenttelligence is at Scenttelligence. I just want to do a shout out to Camp Canna. Thank you so much for hosting me, having me teach a workshop last week. I'm so sorry it went so badly. That wasp really did me in, and that Benadryl really took me out. So I'm really excited to be able to redo this whole thing for you today. I also have posters available on my website, and I'm always happy to answer any questions ever. Now, coming soon, big things to look forward to, the newest version of the Aroma Wheel. Thanks, guys.